Okay, good afternoon, one and all. I've been asked to begin. Distinguished guests, I was very pleased when I was asked to introduce Tzipi Livni. I have personally known Minister Livni, former Minister Livni, since 2004, when she began as Minister of Justice for the first time. I was at the time the deputy of the Attorney General, and I was able to work alongside her, and I found a professional of the highest esteem, whose integrity is unblemished, who really had the will to change and to protect the system. The years in which I worked with Minister Livni, when she was the Minister of Justice and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, were very tumultuous times, and we did not have day or night. They were indistinguishable. I would get phone calls from Tzipi early in the morning or late at night, and we had so many meetings, there were countless, as well as the cabinet meetings, government meetings, committee meetings, work with the various elements, working with other ministries and committees and so forth. Tzipi has since gone through an entire political career, which I don't need to talk about, and I'm sure she has a future in it too. Without a doubt, her way of thought and action has decisive elements, whether you believe in her path or you don't, and I believe we'll hear some more about that from her. We are in the peak of a tumultuous time with terror attacks at home and in Europe and around the world. ISIS is a threat, a nuclear agreement with Iran, Hezbollah, and of course the Palestinian issue, which is always at our doorstep. All of these issues, of course, of utmost importance, but I thought I would take a moment and show you an aspect of Tzipi Livni that not many people know. Her work culture, her thoroughness, her uncompromising professional way that have contributed so much to decision-making into this country. Tzipi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. A few months ago, it was in the Berlin Conference for International Security, I met the Deputy Secretary of the UN, and he told me that in one of his missions to Africa, he got there after, unfortunately, a massacre, and he found a clinic with one doctor, one nurse, and a lot of casualties and injured and dead people keep coming in, and they work 24/7. And he was amazed because he asked the doctor at the end, and he said, "Tell me, how can you, without eating, without sleeping, all the time, you do whatever you do?" And the doctor said to him, "Two words accompany me, anger and hope." And I want to talk to you today both about anger, but anger is not a work plan, and hope. And the anger is mutual to many other people who found Israel dear to them, and the bad spirit that prevailed in Israel in the last election became a storm. And Israel today is in the heart of a storm that threatens to destroy our values, no less than that. You understand that the goal of Zionism was to take the people of Israel out of the ghetto. Herzl, we're now in Herzliya, named after him, and he spoke about the sovereign and independent state of the Jews. Jabotinsky, I grew up on his doctrine. He said that the Jewish people will take off the envelope and live in that sovereign state, a state that will respect and give full rights to the minorities in it, and a sovereign and a strong state, in fact, was established, the State of Israel. However, it feels today like a kind of ghetto in the Middle East, more and more isolated from the world, with closed and extreme religious Judaism, people divided into tribes, as the president said, and a great precipice between them. It's not that we don't know how to be united. We are united in terrible, awful days of terror. We are united vis-à-vis our enemies and anti-Semitism and BDFs that exist in the world, but not everybody is anti-Semitic. And I will not accept anymore the fact that the only thing that unites the citizens of Israel is only our enemies. And it's about time that instead of being united against those who are against us, we shall make a decision. What is the vision, the joint vision that connects us? The state of the Jewish people with all its history, the culture, everything that we contributed to the world. It cannot be that the only thing that actually connects between us that we have enemies. This was the idea of Zionism. This is our challenge today. Now look, you don't have to reinvent all these values. They're written in our scroll of independence. It is signed by all the heads of the state in spite of all the controversies that existed even then between them. However, these are the days in which these basic values are eroded, and we have to now fight again for them. We all are quoting the scroll of independence. We say that this is a Jewish and democratic state, but we didn't really make a decision what it all means. And to my mind, Judaism is not just a religion, and democracy is not just a governance method. It's both. This is a system of values, and the most important value that is both in Judaism and in democracy is respect and equality, including maybe especially the minorities living among us. And thou should love the foreigner or the convert, it says in the Bible. Therefore, the word the Jewish and democratic state means the national state of the Jewish people with full rights to all its citizens. However, this is not what's happening in the state of Israel in the last year. The Knesset, our House of Law, is under attack. That the only thing that unites it is legislation against national minorities, like rejecting suspending the Arabs from the Knesset, ideology like the various NGO laws, decisions that compel ideology adoption of the government, and the last one of the Minister of Culture, control of the media, and other signs that typify totalitarian regimes, attack on the Supreme Court, and jeopardizing the legitimacy of the gatekeepers who are still there for the moment. And with all due respect to the laws of loyalty, when there's no respect, we have to fight for the right to be faithful to the state of Israel and not to its government. The state is not its government, and democracy is not the imposition of positions. Governments change, but the basic values of the state of Israel must remain. For these basic values, for them, this state was established, and the scroll of independence we have to protect, and despair is not an option. Now, it's obvious that this camp that sees what's going on and understands that you cannot go on like that is larger than what it seems, because we have people from the right, supporters of Likud that used to be national and liberal. Some of them were rejected, thrown out. They also look at the state as a beloved son, because it is beloved, and they're also angry, and they're also asking what's going on. And the answer is that it's the same beloved country, but now we have to fight so that it stays so. Now, truth be told, that I would be happy to just end my talks now, to talk about values. I'm very happy to hear that Bogi Ayalon now is going to fight his war, and I'm very happy about it, but I'm sorry it's not enough. In order to give a solution to the real problems, we have to see where they derive from, and we have to see and to admit the main problem that accompanies the state of Israel for almost soon 50 years. There's a great elephant in this room for 50 years, an elephant we shouldn't talk about, because immediately they'll blame you, they'll tell you you're a traitor. And this elephant, what can we do with the territories, the historical territories that we conquered or liberated depends how you're going to call it, in a heroic, justified war almost 50 years ago, that after which we never accepted any real decision of what are we going to do with the results of that war. And the open problem threatens to destroy us from within, not as enemies from the outside, but from within. This conflict penetrates into us, ourselves, and these are the signs that we now see. And before we go over and you come to the question whether there is a partner or not, maybe we'll make a decision among ourselves. What do we want? Not what they want from us. What do we want for our children, for our grandchildren, for this state, and for our future? Now, look, it is self-evident to any driver who goes into a car, or maybe it's not obvious to the leadership, maybe they're driving for too long. But when we go into our car, we put in ways our target, where we want to get. And then it's quite clear you can have traffic jams, and then the Waze tells us that there's an alternative road, but we always want to get to the same target that we marked when we embarked upon that way. And the problem is that Israel today is going in two conflicting directions. It mumbles sometimes two nation state, but does exactly the opposite. It's like leaving Herzliya now and to say we have to go to Beersheba, but to turn the wheel and to go to Haifa. And I think this is a recipe for an accident. In my ways, there is the scroll of independence, and in order to keep Israel Jewish and democratic, you cannot annex all the territories with millions of Palestinians as fully equal citizens. And that's why our safe track goes through the path of two states for two peoples as an Israeli interest, not as a favor to anybody. Preferably with an agreement, and if not, to find the alternative ways in order to get to the same target. However, in the ways of some of the members of the government, the target is the greater Israel. That's the truth. And because they understand that if we're going to annex the territories with all those millions of Palestinians, Israel will never be able to be Jewish and democratic. But they already made their choice. Their choice is a Jewish state, but not democratic. And this is the real reason to the daily injury of democracy and the laws of the Knesset, to jeopardizing the Supreme Court, because it is the one who's authorized to interpret those values of the State of Israel and enforce them on the decision makers. This is the hidden target of all the members of the Jewish Home and some of the Likud members. They want that until this clash happens, which is so expected between the Jewish and democratic values, Israel will no longer be democratic. Maybe it will be a sort of an election system, but definitely it's only going to be a Jewish state. A Jewish state in their way, not in my way. Jewish, that there was no place for the other, for the foreigner. It's not my Judaism, it's not my democracy. And truth be told, that it's not even the position of the majority in the State of Israel. The problem that this group, which is a minority, where they see also only the greater Israel instead of the Jewish democratic state, and the target of the majority is a Jewish and democratic state on account of the greater Israel. However, they have cooperators, collaborators, those that cynically actually want their votes in the government, and those voters in the elections. These collaborators know that Israel cannot annex the territories, and moreover, they know that in this way they can never supply any security. So they continue to talk about what's going to happen, what's going to be. There's a lot of ISIS and ISIL and all sorts of words that will never give security to the State of Israel. But what's more worse than that is that they cannot give security of the State of Israel against the real enemies, and so they invent inside enemies in order to look strong and national. They take out this aggression on the minorities, and instead of coping with our arguments, they try to shut us up. And so peace and democracy became dirty words in the State of Israel. Now, the truth is that I would be happy to talk just about the unity of the people, what's convenient, what's nice to hear, to tell you a story about now center that doesn't say anything, does something social without actually touching this irritable problem. You also heard some people here, I think, but Israel cannot afford to have a leadership that goes between the drops and afraid to get wet politically. The Prime Minister knows, and I say it with certainty, and he understands the situation. And the truth is that if it wasn't sad, I would be amused by the two things that we heard 2 weeks ago. Mr. Security and the other one saying, I'm more security today, and they mumbled the Arab Initiative and 2 states for 2 peoples because they know this is only the beginning of what should happen. And the good news is that I hope that today, or at least it should be evident to the people of the State of Israel, that our way, the one that they kept saying all the time, the thing that we've been saying for years on end, the one we went with in the elections, and we were blamed and accused that this is the way of the weak, the way of those who want to give to others, the way of almost traitors. This way actually is the right way, because otherwise why should they have said those words? But the security of Israel goes not just through words, but also in deeds. And here as well, Netanyahu knows exactly what is required in order to change strategically the regional situation of Israel in order to fight together with the Sunni moderate forces against the Islamic terrorists and extreme. And I'm one that I think we should call the extreme Islamic terror by its name. And the regional peace goes through an arrangement with the Palestinians. This is the opportunity, and we have to talk to them about it, and also about the things that are important to us in any agreement. And it's obvious that if we advance, it has to be advanced with the Palestinians as well. And we have to motivate this process tomorrow morning. However, this government will have to pay more because they do not believe what they say, but we have to start with an economic package of assistance and benefits that the IDF, to put it on the desk of the Prime Minister, that includes what has to be done by a military, an army that absurdly in the State of Israel is much more pragmatic than the political leadership. And the Prime Minister is afraid to say to the IDF, yes, because he says they are collaborators. And that is another thing. We have to stop the building in the settlements, and we have to say it loud and clear. I want to say something about the settlements. They are part of a vision that I was a partner. I'm old enough to remember as a child the excitement of the Six-Day War. And I do believe in the right of the Jewish people on the entire land. But the choice is between the greater Israel and the Jewish democratic state, and I choose the latter. And the vision of the greater Israel was a vision of time that have passed. It's no longer valid. And there's one thing I wouldn't do is to confuse this vision of the settlers together with the security perception. Settlements have nothing to do with security. They don't give security, they consume security. The settlers are definitely our brothers. The citizens of Israel, they deserve any service like anybody else, but not more. And their ideological leadership hasn't got the right to make a decision for us about our future. And if we talk about security, then it's important to say that it's not just an issue of the right or of men. On the contrary, the right government cannot give security. We know that. And you cannot keep saying all the time that everything is ISIL or Daesh. And if we talk already about Daesh or ISIL, so let's direct our compass and our conscience. And then the conflict will become religious, and we're going to get Daesh in the middle of Israel, not because we leave the territories, but because we refuse to leave them, and we're going to embrace them. And then there'll be a conflict without a border and without an agreement. That therefore what Israel needs now is to determine this target. And we must go for a referendum right now, not after the agreement. The former government passed the law of a referendum in order to torpedo an agreement, because if the government says yes, the people can say no. And I'm saying let's make a referendum now. that the people will make a decision now what is the right way. And also, first of all, maybe there will be an agreement or an arrangement, but even if there isn't, at least we'll know what is our direction. Britain is going to a referendum where it will decide whether it wants to leave the EU or not, and we have to do the same thing, to go for a referendum and to choose between two ways, because there aren't any more, between dividing the country, separating from the Palestinians, 2 states for the 2 people, security arrangements which will bring about regional security, and the greater Israel, but equal rights to anybody who lives there. There's no other way in which this state can remain both Jewish and democratic. And the question whether there is a partner for an arrangement on the other side, it's important, but more important that we make a decision. What do we want? To what direction are we aiming? And then we can advance to that target without zigzagging, without changing the direction, and without jeopardizing the basic values of Israel as we see these days. Now, it's true, some people say, why referendum? We had elections. By the way, there's no problem, but somebody should tell me whether these elections were that there will not be a Palestinian state or 2 states for 2 people that Netanyahu spoke about 2 weeks ago. So instead of this entire thing, let's just ask a simple question, as it is, either or. Moreover, if we talk about elections, the elections should be between 2 definite camps, 2 ways, 2 parties in the Knesset, to look at America, Republicans and Democrats. Republicans we have, and now I act in order to establish the Democratic Party, that each of its leaders will have to choose a side and to commit that it's not going to move over to the other side after the elections. And if you ask who's going to be the leader, the public, instead of the ego games. The public, which is a partner to these principles, will be able to select and decide who is going to be the leader in open primaries, and the public is going to be a partner also to the shaping of these principles. This is how democracy should look. We started a process in the last elections with our party, the Zionist camp. We joined 2 parties, but you have to create this big camp of natural partners to democracy, to these values, vis-à-vis a government which is managed today by 1 natural partner, which is not the majority, and definitely they are not our natural partners. And today I am hopeful, because it's obvious today, because of all this exaggeration, the pendulum, anti-democracy, all these legislations, all these texts, all this extremism cause that, of course, the line that crosses the Israeli society is who are we and what are our values. There's a majority in the state of Israel and the public in Israel to a Jewish and democratic state, and also to the 2 states for the 2 peoples that can bring us to regional peace. So that's it. After I spoke about democracy, I don't want to use the Republican slogan regarding make Israel great again, but great, I mean, and that's what's important for us to understand, not the greater Israel, the land, but the state of Israel, that in fact was and still can be a great country, a wonderful one, based on values. Really the miracle of the Middle East, and really the only democracy in the Middle East. When I worked, Arik Sharon used to say when we was a child, the mother, you would take him to the field and it was hot in Israel, and he would look in despair, and she would tell him, don't look ahead. She used to tell him, look back, see how much we achieved until now. Oh, it was his father. Okay, father, then I stand corrected. Now it's going to be his father, but the message is the same message, I think. So first of all, I spoke about the anger and the hope of what we can create, but always it's important to look back as well and to see that actually the state of Israel is the miracle, and we have to preserve it. But as I said in the beginning, too many seeds of hate were sown in the last year. It started with the last election on fertile land. They grew mandates, saw despair on the other side, but now I think we have to stop with this depression and despair. We have to change the trend to sow seeds of hope, a great change. It's possible, it's necessary, this is our duty. Thank you very much.